Well, we have to have respect for the establishment and the structures that have been set up. No, fuck that. Fuck that. Tear it down. Tear it the fuck down. Nah. Okay, Russell Brand and Jordan Peterson have sex. I mean, they talk about sex differences. That's what I meant. Okay.
One of the things I noticed about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there were two things that I noticed that I really didn't like. The first is that because I'm a personality psychologist, as a researcher, not as a clinician, but as a researcher, I know the literature on gender differences in personality because it's part of my field. And I could tell that I was starting to have some reluctance to deliver the lecture on gender differences. Now, I didn't stop, but I felt that I was treading on thin ice by delivering those lectures. And I thought, oh, that's not good. Because I'm
that's
like a
not
comedian.
Good.
I'm pretty much willing to say anything that I think is true. And you know, regardless.
I'm like a comedian in that sense. I speak truth, just like the comedians do. I speak my truth.
Of the consequences in some sense, because I'd rather take the consequences of what's true. And I thought, this isn't good, because if someone like me, who's, you know, rather uncontrollably mouthy, let's say, is starting to have second thoughts about teaching.
He's such a sassy bitch. Look at him. He's such a sassy bitch.
What's a very serious topic and something about which there's
say
a
you're
very
sassy
well-developed science, then how much are other people starting to censor? And at the same time, my students, many of whom were female, were telling me that they were really hesitant to talk about gender differences in any of the courses
female
they
minds
were running. And I thought, oh, this is not good. This is seriously not good.
Peterson's beard is kind of hot. My friend, you didn't have to post that. You didn't have to post that. Nobody needed to know that.
And so, and it's certainly the case that my colleagues censor themselves increasingly on campus with regards to the topics they're willing to discuss. And it's subtle, you know, because imagine in a given lecture,
for that.
I could discuss any of 10 things, and 3 of them are taboo. Well, I just won't discuss those. You know, and that's a kind of invisible censorship. It's not like I'll get up and say, look, I could have talked to you about...
Relisaurus, if you want to hop on Discord, we can discuss this. I've been needing a good debate, so here, I'll link my Discord, if you're up for it. And we can do it after this video.
Gender differences in personality, but I won't because I'm afraid. I'll just pick another topic because there's lots of topics to choose from. And that means there's going to be a bunch of topics that are really important, because actually the issue of sex differences in personality happens to be really important, that people just won't talk about. And the other thing that's so annoying about this is that
people talk about sex differences and personality differences between sexes all the time. Like all the time. That's all people talk about.
Especially with regards to sex differences in personality. Well, let's say that you're firmly on the side of women, just for the sake of argument. Well, do you admit to, or
what does it mean to be on the side of women? Is it women versus, well, of course it's women versus men. Jordan Peterson is a fucking, the elder incel.
Or deny the existence of sex differences in personality? What's better for women? Well, you know, the radical leftists basically say, oh, well, if you talk about sex differences, then you're part of the oppressive patriarchy.
This is such a fucking straw man. That's not true. Nobody says that.
And you're
it's the way that they talk about sex differences. It's the way that they do it.
Attributing to women a different kind of temperament in the attempt to continue the suppression. But I could just as easily say, it's like, well, wait a second. Like, if you want to give the individual the greatest degree of freedom, you say, look, you're different from another person. You're different on the basis of a variety of your characteristics. Sex.
I'm different from other people. That's wild.
Them. That's going to have some effect on what sort of choices you want to make in your life. It's like, go ahead and make whatever choices you want, as far as they're a direct expression of your being. And so if you deny the existence...
On abortions? We could definitely do one on abortions. That's fine.
...of these sex differences, which no serious commentator in the psychological literature, in the personality domain, and those are the people who know about this thing, nobody debates whether or not sex differences in personality exist, or that they have a biological component. And what's also interesting about that...
I think that there are some I don't know about personality differences. I think that there are some tendencies, like when trans women go on hormones, right? When they go on estrogen, they note that they cry more often than they used to, right? It does make them more emotional in some senses. I don't know if that's a personality difference, though. I think the personality differences are mostly societally driven. Does that make sense? Excuse me. Like you're told as a girl you're supposed to act a certain way, as a boy you're supposed to act a certain way, and most people will align to that because we're social creatures and we're going to act the way in most senses that we're told to act because we want to be accepted by the group, right? So, for trans people, you actually will notice some personality changes in a lot of trans people, but it's less because of the hormones and it's more because of the social element. You know what that mean? You know what I mean by that? Like the personality differences that you see, if you do see any, are purely because they're socialized elements of what makes a man and a woman, you know? Hunger Master, we're joking around.
That is that none of those people are conservatives. There are no conservative psychological researchers to speak of. They're in a tiny minority. So the people that have done the research indicating that there are differences between the sexes in personality and that those differences have in part a biological component, those are...
Why is he doing this with his fingers? Like, it looks like he's casting a spell on us. Skedaddle, skedoodle, your room is now your room is now made of noodles. Clean them up. I don't know.
Liberal and left-leaning people who've drawn those conclusions, despite what their ideological presuppositions might have suggested to them to begin with. So, it's, I don't know what to say about that, except that it's all appalling.
I suppose the fear must be that difference will ultimately...
I forgot this guy was even here. Jordan Peterson was droning on.
...used for leverage for status.
Sure, and that's a reasonable fear, because anything can be manipulated, but claims of identity claims that people are identical in some way can also be used for the same reason. If I insist that everyone is exactly the same on all dimensions, that there's just as much of a totalitarian threat lurking in there as there is the threat lurking that we'll use differences as an excuse.
I don't even think that's true. Like saying that everybody's exactly the same is inaccurate, but I don't think that it lends itself to like as much of a threat as, noting people's differences and focusing on people's differences, because it's in the differences between us that totalitarians and fascists are able to take power. They focus on those differences and they say that's what makes us better than them, right? Like, I guess you could do that by stressing the sameness of everybody, but how? How would you even do that? Like, you would still have to say, if you're a person who craves power, you would still have to say, I'm fundamentally different than all of you who are all fundamentally the same, right? Like the kings used to do to the peasants. Who's saying that everyone's exactly the same? He's saying that the left is saying that. If you believe everyone should be exactly the same, how would you achieve any end goal based on that without an incredible amount of authority? I mean, I don't believe everybody should be exactly the same, first of all, but if you were to believe that, I don't know. I like that's a silly thing to believe, for sure, but that, I don't think anybody with any sense of reason really believes that. Conservatives just like saying that leftists believe that because it's convenient for them.
Yes. And we're also not having a serious discussion about this. It's like, yeah, men are overrepresented at the top of the economic apex.
Correct.
That's true. It's a small minority of men, by the way. It's certainly not men in general, but they're radically underrepresented at the bottom, overrepresented at the bottom. And believe me, man, like nobody cares about men who are failures.
Wait, I don't think that they are. I could be wrong on this. I don't know what statistics he's even referring to here, but I don't think that they're radically misrepresented at the bottom. I don't think that's true.
They are like off the bloody radar.
Yeah.
So, and there's no sympathy for men.
By the way, also, yes, he is actually touching on an important and true point right now. There is very little sympathy for men who are at the bottom. And we've talked about this before. I work with guys who come on off the streets, right? Who are drug addicts. Men are way more prone to drug addiction and suicidal tendencies than women are. There's societal reasons for that. And I think that that's important to be addressed, which we can address through progressive policies, right? And through allowing men to be more in a social sense feminine, right? allowing them to express their emotions, allowing them to live meaningful lives that don't just aren't just about like working all the time, right? Don't tell them to toughen up or, what have you. I mean, like I said, we've talked about all this stuff before. Let men be people.
Who are failures. So men stack up at the top and the bottom. And we don't have a discussion about that. And we don't have a discussion about the fact that women are radically underrepresented in dangerous jobs, although they are. Or in
I don't know about the poverty thing, but I do believe we've gone over how men are more men are homeless than women. Yes.
Or in trades that require like brutal physical labor, women are radically underrepresented. Or in jobs outside, women are radically underrepresented.
That is true.
So the complaint is always, well, if you look at the top 1%, there are more men than there should be, by pure sex division. It's like, well, yeah, but if you look at the bottom, the reverse is true. So if we're going to have the discussion, which I don't really necessarily think we should.
But I don't think that if you look at the bottom, the reverse is true necessarily. Like, I don't even know if that makes sense. Women are literally more impoverished. Let's just look it up. Yeah, there it is. Women experience higher rates of poverty than men. In 2018, 12.9% of women lived in poverty. Now, where is this talking about? American progress. Okay, so this is in the United States. Nearly 10 million women lived in deep poverty, defined as falling below 50% of the federal poverty line. Yeah, here. You got men versus women. In every population except for Asian, in which it's just about equal, 10 versus 10.1, you have more women in poverty than men. Every single one. So yeah, women are by and large more impoverished. 7.1% of white men versus 9% of white women. 19.4% of black men versus black women at 22.5%. So yeah, women are more impoverished. So Jordan Peterson is literally just lying here, or he's pulling shit out of his ass, which is nothing new.
To have that discussion, but if we're going to have the discussion, then we should look across the entire economic spectrum.
I wonder how much of this debate is being governed by unconscious forces. I wonder how much of what we're experiencing is a manifestation of a sort of where cartography has not yet been. I think that
I think a lot of it. What are you thinking about?
Hold on. I wonder how much of this discussion is being driven by unconscious forces where cartography has not even been. Can anybody tell me what that meant? Anybody? I'm not just stupid, right? Obi Jaws, thank you so much for the 100 bits. I don't know why the sound alert didn't go off, but thank you. There it is. JP's arguments
just ain't true. He's talking about men, to men, for men, white men at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what he said about homelessness is true. I think more men are homeless, but that doesn't mean that more men are impoverished. I mean, there are definitely statistics of men, I think 90% of federal prison population is men, right? There are definitely elements of society where men take the shaft, but more often than not, it is women, But again, I don't look at this as men versus women, okay? And that's the problem with conservatives is that they do. They always see it in groups, right? In chunks of people, like men versus women, black versus white. It's got to be what else? Gay versus straight. Like I want everybody to be able to live good and happy lives, right? That's what I want. So I think it's worth recognizing these differences, but only so that we can start to break them down and not pit people against each other. You know what I mean? Whereas TERFs, people like TERFs, take the opposite approach, where it's all about women and all about how bad women have it in all elements and all aspects, all the time, everywhere. And men are actually horrible, terrible, no good, very bad people, right? Yeah, that's bullshit. I hate TERFs. I hate everything about TERFs. TERFs are awful. They can suck my dick. And they're man haters. They're literally just man haters. They hate men and dicks. They hate dicks. They should seek therapy.
About any particular part of it?
What I feel like is that the reason that I imagine that your arguments that are based on research are so successful is because people are expressing feelings as opposed to cogent and researched arguments. Mm-hmm. It feels like there is a powerful, dominant patriarchy, and no one can deny, that there is power. There's such a thing as power, and there are people...
No, there's stats to back that up. You guys are the ones doing the feeling. Jordan Peterson literally just made a feelings-based argument by saying that men are overwhelmingly represented at the bottom as well as the top. That's feelings-based. He didn't look any shit up for that. He didn't even cite any sources. None! Not even like phony sources. He didn't even try. He just went off of vibes.
That benefit from structures being as they are.
Of course.
That's the point of those structures being the way they are. One of the things
And also, by the way, that illustrates to you just how low effort these people are. Because if I really wanted to, I could make an argument that men are overrepresented at the bottom. Suicide rates, drug use, homelessness, incarceration, crime rates. Men have it all, right? I could make that argument, but I'm not going to, because I could mislead you with enough of those statistics to make you think that men have it worse. When the reality is that, yeah, men have it pretty fucking bad, but women have it worse in most ways. Loaded question. I feel like it's a good question. Do you believe that all humans should be people? People being a legal term to describe humans with rights and equality under the law. If we're leading into the abortion thing, which it kind of seems like it is, all humans should be people. Like that's a very difficult and complex question that I'd have to break down, because then we would have to get into like, what if you're in a coma and never expected to never get out of it, and other people have jurisdiction over your body? Like that's complicated. So we'll leave that for now.
Observed is that
not
whenever
a bad question,
change
just
is
not
discussed,
right now.
and my tendency has always been to be sympathetic towards movements that are about change or empowerment of
that's true as well,
might be termed disadvantaged groups. That
change
that when you're curious about the resistance of change or the difficulties that you face when trying to bring about change, look at who would be negatively impacted were that change to be brought about. And usually that means that there's some people who, conservatism makes sense to a particular group of people. Mm-hmm. One of the things I felt when reading a book.
Yeah, conservatism makes sense to a particular group of people. I think we have a word for those people, guys. What would we call people whom conservatism makes sense to? What would we call those people? There might be a word for that. I think it's a fair question. If you call something a human right and it doesn't apply to all humans and it's not a human right at all, we'd have to define what a human is first. Anyway.
Was that, because I think you're coming from a perspective of psychoanalysis, and it rings the language rings true and the analysis rings true. Where I feel, one question I was keen to bring to you is when you talked about skateboarders in I think it's the last but one chapter, and that spirit of young people, courage and a willingness to try dangerous things and to push forward. I wonder how that sits with the idea of an earlier passage in the book where you talk about the gratitude that we should feel for, having time to read a book and the ability to read a book, and sort of respect for the establishments and systems.
Hold on, I'm already lost in the sauce. Is this my ADHD acting up, or did he just completely? I feel like every word that comes out of his mouth makes him sound more crazy than the last word. He was talking about skateboarders, and he was talking about being grateful. Try dangerous things, push forward.
Idea of an earlier passage in the book where you talk about the gratitude that we should feel for, having time to read a book and the ability.
How does the ability to push forward have anything to do with gratitude for having the time to read a book?
To read a book and sort of respect for the establishments and systems that have been set up from which we all benefit. Because when
what? Isn't this guy supposed to be like some kind of anti-establishment guru or some sort? Did he just say have respect for the establishment? That is the most cucked thing I've ever heard come out of any human being's mouth. Well, we have to have respect for the establishment and the structures that have been set up for. No, fuck that. Fuck that. Tear it down. Tear it the fuck down. Nah, man. I'm built different. Sorry, Russell. I just built a little different. That's easy. There's a definition of human that exists in biology. I understand that, but it's still socially constructed. We'll get into it. Calm down. We'll get into it. I'll let you into the voice call in a sec. Does he call himself a leftist? He's a comedian? No, he's not, because he's literally sitting here talking to fucking Jordan Peterson in a serious capacity.
Find it difficult to dispute your opinion about sort of churlish, what would have been in the lexicon of the day, social justice warriors and that kind of somewhat rootless unresearched rage.
What?
I
Unresearched?
identify what you're saying there. People
Yeah.
that can't keep their bedrooms tidy, you be careful before you let them organise an economic system.
Oh, yes.
But similarly,
As the research would say, anybody who's an SJW does not have a clean room. Hello, Ali is crying. Go follow Ali is crying. Been a while.
like, where is change going to come from? Who is going to challenge tyranny?
Yeah.
Is it going to be?
Those are the sorts of twin forces that we
Wait, who's going to challenge tyranny?
But similarly, like, where is change going to come from? Who is going to challenge tyranny?
Yeah.
Is it going to be?
Those are the sorts of twin forces that we
Certainly not somebody who says we should have respect for the fucking systems.
contend with across the political spectrum. So I could run through something quickly to put the things that you just brought up in perspective. Let's say, okay. So the first thing is that hierarchies, if you're going to value some things more than others, then hierarchies are inevitable, and you have to value some things more than others, or you don't have.
I value pizza over hamburgers. I like both very much, but if I had to pick one over the other, I'd pick pizzas. But like that doesn't entail, like, we're going to have hierarchies in human society no matter what happens, right? We're going to have hierarchies. The point of things like socialism, anarchism, what have you, is to get rid of unjust hierarchies. Obviously, somebody who studies medicine is going to be higher up in this hierarchy of knowledge than somebody who's never opened a medical book in their life. And we would defer to the medical expert first, or at least those of us with sense would. We would defer to the medical expert first in this hierarchy, and then if they can't get an answer for us, I don't know. Like, of course there are going to be hierarchies of sorts. The point is to reduce power hierarchies, right? Power structures that are not fair or are not justified, right? Unjust power structures.
have anything
Well, like
valuable.
beauty or strength or something.
Or
Food.
competence, or sure, whatever it happens to be. The ability to play the flute, right? It doesn't matter what
High
it
on
is.
my list.
Well, what obviously, if you value music, then you're going to value some musicians more than others because some are better. So
That is extraordinarily arbitrary, though. Like, at a certain, obviously, if you're first starting to play the flute, you're probably not going to be as good as, like, a professional flutist. But once you get to the professional level, you can't really compare between, like, even below the professional level. If you can play competently, it's difficult to compare, like, different musicians. You know what I mean? Because at that point, you're comparing apples to oranges. And also, yeah, I don't even know why I'm trying to break this down as though any of it means anything. Where did we even come from? Like, we're talking about differences in sex and personality, and now we're on hierarchies of society. Like, I don't know where they're going with this. I don't know how we got here. I'm just taking it as it comes. This is actually not bad for my ADHD, so whatever.
So you have to value things in order to move forward in life, and you have to value things in order to have something valuable to produce. But if you play out the value in a social landscape, you're going to produce a hierarchy. And the problem with producing a hierarchy is that a small number of people are going to be more successful than the majority, and a very large number of people aren't going to be successful at all at that particular thing. It's inevitable. So, okay.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Not at all. That's not true at all. If you put 50 people in a room and you give them all the resources that they need, like, to survive or whatever, like, you're not even in a room. You just take 50 people who are living their lives and you say, we're going to provide everything for you. We just need you to learn how to play the flute, right? All 50 of those people could potentially learn at a similar level to play the flute. And you might even have like 50 different styles of playing, but they can all play the flute equally competently. It's not inevitable that one of them is going to rise above the others and be the master flute player. Like, no, that doesn't happen. No, that's silly. It's silly bitch shit.
Now, so you say, well, we have to put up with that because we need to pursue things of value. Okay, fine. So that's the right-wing perspective, is that the hierarchies are justifiable and necessary. Now, the left-wing perspective is, yeah, but wait a minute.
Oh, boy.
The problem with hierarchies is that people stack up at the bottom and that they tilt towards tyranny across time. And that's also true. And so you need that dialectic in society between the right wing that says, we need the hierarchies.
Oh,
and
God,
they're
he's
useful
doing
and you
big
should
brain
be grateful
centrism.
for them, and they structure you and give you form and provide value. And the left...
Well, he's right about one Yeah, I'll say two things. He's right about two things. One, conservatives tell you to be grateful for the hierarchies because they want you to suck their fucking boots, right? The other thing that he's right about is that leftists correctly point out that favoring hierarchies will inevitably lead to a clutter at the bottom of people who just don't have the shit that they need to survive. We could literally live in a capitalist society where everybody has everything that they need to survive. You guys know that, right? We could. The problem with capitalism is that there's a constant drive for profit, okay? There's a constant drive for more and more and more, and the only way that you're going to get more is if you take it from the bottom, okay? But with the problem with what he's saying is that conservatives aren't advocating for just hierarchies, for hierarchies that are justified. No, they want hierarchies that are not justified, like capitalist hierarchies, merit-based, quote unquote, which are not, justified because that's literal profit theft. Anyway,
but they
wage theft.
Exclude people, and people stack up at the bottom, and that's dangerous to the hierarchy itself, and it means that people might not have opportunity, and you have to say yes to that. The problem comes, and this is the situation we're in right now, where the radical leftists, and this is mostly a problem that really permeates the universities, the radical leftists say, yeah, but all hierarchies are just...
Notice what he did there. He said the radical leftists permeate the universities. He's trying to implant a seed of distrust in our educational systems. Notice that.
Tyrannical power. It's like, oh no, they're not. Hierarchies are based on competence in a functioning society, and mostly
he's shilling for capitalism.
Functions. So you can't go that far. Now, that doesn't mean that hierarchies don't tilt towards self-interest and tyranny across time, but that's a bad thing. It's even a bad thing from the conservative perspective.
Yeah, okay. That was a whole bunch of nonsense. They were supposed to talk about sex differences in personality, but it kind of went off the rails. So I didn't absorb all of it. But yeah, always great stuff from Jordan Peterson. Also, I've been wanting to dip a little bit into Russell Brand's shit for a while. It seems like it could be very entertaining, so maybe we'll do that one day.